Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started and start modeling a section of the concentric wall, which is the outer wall of the castle. So if it has a wall protecting the courtyard of the castle, like let's say one wall on the inside, and then another wall on the outside protecting it, this would be the concentric wall. And the inside wall would be called the curtain wall. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start modeling the concentric wall. And we're going to be doing this, we're just going to use the box tool and kind of drag out our basic shape for it. And the reason why we're modeling just small segments is what we're going to do is piece them together in layout, because layout seems to handle geometry a lot better than modeler, especially massive amounts of geometry. And if we design an entire castle in modeler, it's going to be a pretty large file. So, okay, we're going to go to the second layer here. We're going to start creating the Merlins, which are the top parts that you'll see on a castle, protecting the archers along the allure, which is the walk. You want to make sure that these are about twice as wide as they are tall, because if you look at a real castle, that's exactly what they'll be, is about twice as wide as they are tall. Some of them vary, of course, but the type we're going to make right now are twice as wide. Okay, we're going to use the drag tool, which is Control T, and just pull down this front corner right here, just so we get a nice little accent on there. It'll pick up some extra light, look a little more interesting. And maybe just a little bit more. And make it just a tad bit taller using the stretch tool, which is H on the keyboard. Okay, and the next thing we're going to do, create the arrow loops, which are the slits that you'll see along Merlins and towers and turrets and things like that, which allow archers to defend the castle. And we're going to create 2 of these per Merlin. And trying to make them as equally spaced as possible. Okay, and then we're going to throw the new boxes in the background layer and do a Boolean subtract, which is Shift B. And actually we're going to pull these points up just a little. But if there's one thing that you notice, is that the back slot is not showing through. And this happens a lot when you're doing Booleans. And there is definitely a way to fix it. And the best way to fix it is first push M on the keyboard, which is going to merge your points together, which are the extra points you just created. Okay. And then what you're going to want to do is select that polygon, move it over to the points mode, throw on wireframe here, and just split these polygons using Control L. Which doesn't seem to be working. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to rebuild it. Sometimes Lightwave can be a little tricky. And I guess it's good that this happened to come up, because now you can learn how to fix it. And we're going to kill this polygon using K on the keyboard. And that deletes the polygon only and leaves the points remaining. bring this back to wireframe mode, and we're going to do point-by-point selection. And what we're going to do is select these points, making sure you always select them in order, and hit P on the keyboard, and that will create the polygon. And then this bottom part, and then the one last one in the center here. Actually, I think these side ones need to be done as well. Yep, one last one. Select the points on that. And there we go. Now it shines through. Light can shine through both sides, and the archers will be able to effectively do their jobs. Okay, and now we're going to create a beveled edge along the Merlin, so that it picks up some extra light. Because depending on which way the lights are facing, or the camera, as you can see right now, these two polygons blend into each other, and it kind of looks like just kind of an odd shaped polygon, and it doesn't really have much depth because of that. So what we're going to do is select a few polygons here, the top one, and we're going to use Bevel, which is B on the keyboard, and just add a slight bevel. And as you can see, there's already a nice edge right there. We're going to do the side ones as well. And there we go. Now we also want the arrow loops to have a bevel. So what we're going to do is just select the inside polygons and do a small bevel on that as well. Doesn't have to be anything dramatic. Just that tiny little bit will add just enough realism. Actually, we're going to resize these loops just a bit. Okay, there's two technical ways you can create the Merlins on the wall. This version I'm showing you right now is a little bit faster, but depending on the type of wall you're creating, you might need this to be one continuous polygon as we move the Merlins across. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the other way of modeling the Merlins, so that we don't get this seam, as you can see right here. Where there's the polygons meeting up. And you see that kind of edge. And that's going to throw off the lights just a tad. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to show you the other way, in case you did want a flush wall. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a small accent across the top, so you cannot see that. But I'm going to show you the other way. And that way is to create a box, a single-sided polygon box. So make sure you don't pull it out on top. And we're just going to space these out, add some segments, and then move these points up so they match, approximately, and go ahead and kill the polygons. And then, as we select it, we're going to create this one polygon out of this. So go to point mode, and just select the points in order. And I didn't select that last point there because we're not going to need it, nor these. And then what you do with this is just extrude, and then you can also find to bring those down, and then mirror, because we will be having these on both sides. And then you can also create your walkway. for the top. It doesn't look too great, but it kind of gives you an idea of how to create it if you wanted this to be one solid polygon. So we're just going to delete that right now and go back to what we were working on. Okay, we can delete the booleans. And now we're going to add a small accent in the back of the Merlin, which is just going to add a little tiny bit more realism. And we'll open a new layer, put the other two in the background, and just create a small box. And we'll pull that down. And we're going to do full bevel on this. So we'll just zoom in a little and do a little bevel. And that's going to pick up light on that. And now we'll copy and paste that and use the stretch tool. And just so you have a little tiny bit more that stretches along the bottom. And we'll pull it in. Okay, we can delete these bottom polygons because we won't need them. We can also delete the black polygons because we won't need those. And if you look here, you can see it adds just a little tiny bit more detail to it. It looks a lot nicer. And when we render later, we'll be giving them different surfaces than this, and perhaps maybe a wood texture or something like that, and it'll give a lot more detail, look a lot nicer. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we can cut these and paste them on the Merlin later. And then we'll bring our main wall in the background. And we're going to go ahead and just start copying and pasting these over. Trying to keep as much equal distance. And that still looks like it's a little off. Okay, what we're going to have to do is change the wall shape just a bit and pull it out so it matches up. And the reason why we're going to have that gap right here is so that when we butt this end up, when we clone it in layout, so that we don't have two Merlins right against each other. And we won't really have to worry about the seam too much if we do it right in the layout. Okay, it looks pretty good. So what we're going to do is go ahead and mirror these over. Because we do want to have them on both sides. And we're going to change the size just a little on this wall so it looks a little better. Wind it up, make it a little bit taller. And then push F2 on the keyboard to center it. And there we go. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of an accent on the actual wall itself. So we're going to use the knife tool, which is Shift K, and create two knives. Do that again. And then pull, or stretch rather, these inward. And that just looks a little nicer. Move this up a little higher, because it is a castle, so we are going to need tall walls. And then we're also going to create the same thing on the bottom. A lot of castles actually have this mostly on the bottom. I like it both on the top and bottom. And the main reason they have it on the bottom is so that if they happen to be defending the castle and they drop rocks off, this angle right here will launch them towards whoever might be attacking. And they're usually about a 45-degree angle. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the allure, which is the walkway on the top of a wall. And for this we're going to be using smooth shift. So select the polygon, shift F, right mouse click, H for stretch, and pull it in just beyond the Merlins. And then we want to also have a highlight before we pull it down. So what we're going to do is smooth shift again and pull it down just a tad. And then pull it down. And give it just a little bit of an angle. Okay, and once more, just so we get that nice little highlight where the edges where it's meeting. And we'll be deleting the side polygons of the actual wall and the bevels or smooth shift we just made from bringing this down. And that looks pretty nice right there. A nice walkway. I'll maybe make it just a little bit wider. Push the F2 to center it and pull it back up. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create that accent along the top right here, which is going to separate these so that we do not see the seam when we are rendering. But first we're going to delete the bottom polygons off each one of the Merlins because we will not be needing them and they'll just take up precious rendering time, and cut them and paste them on the wall. I'm just going to be using the box tool for this. It doesn't need to be very complex, because it's mostly, and that's the main point of all this really, is it doesn't really have to be too complex, because it's pretty much going to be the texture that gives the life to the castle. And picking the right texture is a very important part, especially when dealing with castle walls. But we'll get to that later in the tutorial. Okay, those seem to match up. Alright, we're going to go ahead and give this a bevel. So it picks up some light, and we'll pull this down and over. Make it just a little more interesting. Okay, we'll go ahead and mirror that over. There's one last thing I wanted to do to the wall. Just because we have these sharp edges here, it's only one point, which might not look great when rendering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knife just an extra set of points and just pull it in a tiny bit. Just so it's a little more rounded, a little more realistic. And especially, this is a good idea if you're going to have smoothing on. In this case, we will not, because this is just a standard wall and there's no roundness to it, and we don't need it. For the round towers, we will definitely be using smoothing. And that bottom one's okay. Alright, the next thing we're going to add are the corbels, which are the supports, or any support of a castle is called a corbel. And we're going to do the wall corbels, which support the tilt underneath each one of the Merlins. I'm just going to use the box tool. We'll go in and bevel it just a tiny bit. It's a bit much. Okay, and we'll rotate this just so we just barely want it sticking out. Zoom in just a little. Alright, we can delete those top polygons and the back ones. If you look, we got a nice little support sticking out there. So what we're going to do is now copy and paste them over. And try to get them as centered as possible. Okay, the wall's almost done. We're just going to add one more thing. Just another sort of accent along the wall here. I'll bevel it and delete the back polygons. We can delete these other polygons. And then we're going to copy and paste these over in the centers. Okay, and the modeling is complete, and now we're going to give it surface names. Last minute mirrors on these, just so it's equal on both sides. And we can cut and paste everything on the first layer. And there we go, the modeling of our concentric wall is complete. And next we're going to be modeling the curtain wall.